Today's episode of the Kirk Miller Podcast, we have a very, very special guest, Chris Lowe, aka The Wizard. Absolutely phenomenal human being, master of nutrition and all aspects of high performance, and a key member of our Built to Last team, and an absolute savage when it comes to looking after world-class elite athletes in the sporting world. Today we're going to be covering as much as we physically can in the time we have available, talking all aspects of food, high performance, and Chris sharing some insights of how he gets some of the best athletes on the planet in peak condition for their relevant sport. And we'll be talking about how he has helped take our clients' performance inside Built to Last to a completely different level. I'll fully be transparent. I've been in coaching now for many, many years. I've produced many fantastic results by myself within my coaching services, but then Mr. Lowe come along and I can safely say he took things to a completely different level. So Chris, absolutely delighted to have you here. I know we were trying to set this up for, a number of months now, but due to logistics of me being in Dubai, London, Coventry, and obviously you up north in the UK, we finally made it happen ahead of our upcoming Built to Last event. So first and foremost, mate, thank you for having you. And I appreciate your time in advance.
No, absolute pleasure to be on, and really looking forward to it.
100%. So let's kick things off, mate, because obviously one of the things that I love hearing myself from a bias point of view, and I'm sure anyone listening, is people's story really on how they got to the way they are. You know, if you just share probably a lot more articulate than I just did, the teams, for example, you've looked after, some of the athletes and from the different sports. If you share that first and foremost, and then we can work back, from how it all started really.
Yeah, so in terms of like getting into nutrition, it's kind of by complete luck, should we say.
Yeah.
So I always had a key interest in terms of just improving myself in terms of getting stronger, fitter, faster. Always wanted to train and eat and be like an athlete, right?
Yeah.
Always from like, say, 14, 15-year-old. So then basically at the time of wanting to go to university, went down to Cardiff and I wanted to do sports science. It's like I wanted to run around fields.
So was that straight after school, Chris?
Yeah, straight after school.
Yeah.
I wanted to go down to Cardiff because as a Welsh lad, wanted to go down to the capital.
Yeah.
Move out of the small village into the big town.
Yeah.
So I went down to Cardiff and basically wanted to do sports science, but they basically said like, right, you got the grades, but you can't do this course because you haven't got a county level sport by your name.
You hadn't got what, sorry?
A county level sport.
Oh, because you hadn't physically been at that level yourself.
I ride bikes. It's like there isn't a county. I was like, I'm quite good on a bike, but I was like, well, okay, what do I do then? And they're like, oh, we got this other course. And it's like, right, sports, biomedicine and nutrition.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, you'll like that. It's like, oh, okay then.
Yeah.
I'll give it a go. And it's kind of like a jack of all trades course. You kind of did a little bit of biomedical science, you did a bit of nutrition, biomechanics, psychology. So you kind of did a lot of things.
Yeah.
So you kind of jack of all trades, master of none.
Yeah.
And nutrition one just kind of stood out to me the most.
Why?
Just in terms of like the science behind it, it's like, right, if you have this nutrient, it impacts the body through this mechanism, you have this outcome, you do this over a long period of time, you get this result. And it just really kind of interests me. And it's probably an area that I didn't know much of. Yeah. And like I said, it just really interests me. Like the training side of things, I kind of grasped quite well. Yeah. But the nutrition is just such a huge field.
Yeah.
And in terms of how deep you can go into it, in terms of the science behind it all, it just absolutely fascinated me.
Yeah.
And then when I started applying it to myself during those kind of university years, I was like, right, this is something I really want to do. But then you kind of leave that kind of course and it's like, right, I'm somewhat qualified, but not really, because we kind of did a little bit of everything. So then I had to go to the next step and do my master's in sport and exercise nutrition. Yeah. And that's where, it really kind of grew then the interest, and that just gave me more of the applied knowledge of how to actually take all this science and put it into action. That took me then up to the north of England in Leeds, and when you kind of finished there, I kind of thought, right, I'll get the degree, get the credentials, and I'll just walk into a job. But all you have to do is a Google search and see how many sports nutrition roles there are in elite sport. Yeah, like none.
Really? So what were you thinking at that point then? So obviously you do all this studying, because I mean that can be demoralising. I'm sure anyone who's done any form of higher education or invested time into anything, and then at the end you're thinking, okay, where do I go from here? What did you do?
I was just really naive. I thought like, oh, I just need grades and there'd be jobs, right?
Yeah.
But it wasn't. So basically, I then luckily started personal training, and I walked into a gym. They're like, right, Chris, here's 30 hours of personal training clients per week.
So what gym was that? Just I'm curious, because obviously I know,
It was just a really small private gym. It's like literally one room. It wasn't like a big commercial gym or anything like that, but they did have a solid client base.
Yeah.
So it's like, right.
So that got you in front of people, basically?
Got that in front of people because I had no coaching skills, really poor communication skills.
Yeah.
Like, I just thought people were like, just numbers, like, oh, you're 2,000 calories, you're 20 grams
yes.
of protein.
Yes.
You know, I had no kind of personal skills or anything like that.
Yeah.
So this personal training role I did for a couple of years, and it's so important in terms of my development as a practitioner and a coach, you know?
Yeah.
So I basically did that, then over time, I sort of slowly built up my one-to-one nutrition work. Like literally every gap I got in my schedule is like, right, let's read more nutrition, let's try and put content out there. Because I realized that I want to do this nutrition thing and there's no jobs out there, so I had to give myself a job, you know? So basically did that slowly and built that up. Then over time, personal training came down, nutrition went up, and I was in the north of England up in Leeds, so basically the M62 is basically all rugby league, going from like Hull to Liverpool.
So would you say, like, so now obviously, those of you who don't know Chris, he's a massive rugby fan. Obviously I've been primarily football, but were you a big, especially being Welsh, were you a big rugby fan prior to wanting to maybe explore working with rugby players, or did that you fall onto that by accident after the courses? Yeah,
you're literally drilled into doing rugby from early age in school, and that's the main thing you did. So with the Welsh national team being, I don't know if they're good at the moment, but
no, but they're like a large part of the identity of Wales, aren't they? When you think of Wales, you think of rugby and
for sure,
and,
just
and
like
drinking.
Love the sport, and and then when I got so they played rugby union. When in north of England it's all rugby league. I was like, what's this sport? I have no idea what it is. So I got into that, and it's an incredible sport, like incredible athletes, tough as hell, like they're incredible, how resilient they are and stuff, and it's just great to start working with them.
And so let me just rewind a second. So you said when you first got into coaching, were the clientele when you first started personal training, was that more like general pop? Because I mean, I know myself, when I first came into the game, it was, you can't be very choosy with who you're working with. You just got to obviously get used to learn about different people. So how did you evolve from training general pop to then, starting with rugby players, etc.? How did that happen?
Yeah, like with the clientele, it's such a wide range, but all kind of general population from, sort of 25-year-olds all the way up to like sort of 60-year-olds, all this kind of stuff. So had a huge range of individuals, different personalities, and that just really evolved my coaching skills quite considerably. Because
I'm here to probe questions and draw this out. So when you were coaching these general pop clients, what did you learn? Did you learn anything from coaching these general pop clients that you can now remotely use when it comes to coaching high-end athletes? Were there any people skills, or was there anything you could transfer across? Relationships?
Yeah, amazing. 100%. Like, as that kind of saying goes, like, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care.
Yeah.
And it's like, if I go in and it's like, right, we're doing this today, this day, they're like, you kind of need to have that little bit of chat beforehand, by that trust, by that rapport.
Absolutely.
And then they know that you care, you come from a place of like love, so they're going to implement a little bit better, should we say.
Yeah.
And that's exactly the same thing. Yeah. Like, when we think of like athletes, doesn't matter what level they're at, they're people first.
Yeah, absolutely.
They still have the same kind of issues as everyone else. And so, you still have to treat them on like a human being level first, like account for all their kind of logistical demands of the day, their personal demands, the psychological kind of strains, all this stuff. And then you cater for the sport on top of that.
Yeah. Because I suppose, like, you actually think about it, even athletes, or it's no different to an athlete, his job is rugby, football, boxing, whatever it is. In the same way, if you look at who we coach in Built to Last, their form of rugby, boxing, sport is their job, their profession. But you strip that back, they've all got a house they go to, they've all got personal relationships, they've all got personal stresses, they've all got different beliefs, they've all got, life.
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah, and I suppose it's just learning to get the best out of them, in that way possible. So, just again, sorry to rewind again, because I'm nosy about stories. I'm sure everyone listening is. During your school years growing up, were there any pivotal moments growing up that you think shaped your fascination with high performance, and whether you realised it or not back then? But did you think that there was any moments during, like, infant school, as I call it, or secondary school, that really made you think, I want to explore that, as I grow up? Was there any moments that really shaped you wanting to? Because if I think of you, Chris, and hence why I'm so grateful to have you as part of the Built to Last team as well, is the attention to detail, the obsessiveness to high performance, and if something could be done better, it gets done, and you just notice things that other people don't, especially when it comes to food, and also the emotional side, or the emotional states that drive the decisions to eat certain foods. Like, was that just natural, or do you think from an early age you had a fascination to like explore these things based on the way you grew up, or where do you think that comes from?
Yeah, I think like the people I hung around with, like if I go back to say the early mountain bike kind of days, the guy you always go riding with, still go riding with him now to this day, and just his standards and his attention to detail is the same as mine. Like, he's a doctor down in Cornwall, like very, very high standards in terms of how we do things. And just for example, we used to do like a lot of dirt jumping, and you do like tricks and stuff like that. And it's like there's a right way to do things and a wrong way to do things. Yeah, it is. And it always just like really kind of like OCD with the detail, like, this limb wasn't quite extended, do it again. It's like with 15, 16-year-old, like there's, and we're sort of thinking that way. It's like, this can be done better. So do that. So
he played a massive role. Well, we speak about it all the time, don't we? Your peer group and friends, they shape your standards a lot of the time. So was he someone who was in the same class as you at school, or so he just fell into that by accident? Yeah.
He's got the same birthday as me, so
a Virgo, by the way. If I hadn't brought this on previous podcasts, I don't know if anyone's really into star signs. I believe in these things. Me and Chris are both Virgos, and he's saying his friend was as well. And I definitely think with the obsessive traits and details that can annoy people at times, but also it's helpful too, right?
Yeah, for sure. Like in terms of like the standards, like he was always like one of the smartest guys in school in the year kind of thing. Always the best at sport. And like if I just hung around with him, which I did, it's like just pulls me up, So your social environment is so important for that. So that definitely molded like a lot of the sort of standards behind it, and the kind of the PE, the physical education side of it. And all kind of just moved in that direction. So then, fast forward back again once you complete your courses. What age did you finally wrap up, with personal training and really try and go all in, with nutrition, your nutrition coaching? So it was probably around 23, 24.
Yeah, and what age are you now for anyone listening or watching?
33.
33, he's a baby compared to me. So yeah, you knocked that on the head at that age, and then how did things go from there? Because obviously, I know you've worked with some real elite teams and elite athletes. That just doesn't happen by accident. So, what was the first, not big break, but that first bite at someone who was of a high level performance, and how did that happen?
So at the same time as personal training, kind of towards the tail end of it, I had an office in Leeds where I did face-to-face kind of nutrition consultations. So I built it up to a decent standard. And like one of the head of athletic performances for Hull KR, he was in the gym. And I was like, right, Hull KR is a rugby league team. And I was like, right, I really need to get into this sport. How do I do it? And he basically invited me over, like just... I don't know, might saw something in me, which is quite nice. He's like, right, just consult with us for a day and we'll see how you get on. And then I did a couple of days, and that turned into more of a kind of structured role the following year. And I was with them for about 4 years, consulting, doing nutrition work on a one-to-one basis for the team. So that's really cool. So it's literally just got that role, that first kind of break, should we say, off the back of just asking, like having a conversation, just like, right, I really want to do this. I don't really see the way in.
Yeah.
Because when I look online, if I do a Google search, no jobs out there.
No, absolutely not.
So it's like, how do we do this?
It's basically, you make things happen. You're clear on what you want, and you're just like, who can I, within my immediate environment, contact to potentially open up a door?
Yeah, 100%. And it was just that, like, got the opportunity, made sure I did a really good job.
Yeah.
Have impact, provide value, and then it's
escalate from there.
From there. And the thing is, like, when you're in rugby, at least, it's quite a small place. Everyone knows everyone.
Yeah.
So then it's like, Wasps Rugby, the academy, we're looking for a nutritionist at the same time, or a few years later.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, what's Losey like? And you're like, oh, yeah, he's good. Get him down. So then I went down there, had like a trial with them, and then it's like, okay, he did a really good job. And then that turned into a role. And then Wasps.
So what year did you start working with Wasps Rugby Club? That was obviously they were in Coventry as well, my hometown, weren't they?
We're in Coventry.
We're in Coventry, yeah.
So that'd be gone back about 4 or 5 years now.
Yeah. And am I right in saying you were going to Wasps for 2 days a week or something?
Yeah, it was initially 2 days a week, like pre-COVID.
Yeah.
So sometimes 3 days a week if I had the first team in the academy to do.
Yeah. So you were, to give you some context, wasn't it? You were looking after the whole nutrition for the Wasps whole first team and their youth team as well. Yeah,
at one point it's pretty much from 14s, 15s, all the way up into the senior squad. So there's a lot of guys to look after.
Yeah. What did you, I mean, because this is, again, we'll get into the nitty gritty here of like food and habits and behaviours and all this stuff, because from the outset, I know a lot of people maybe look at rugby players, footballers, especially the way things have evolved and standards are always, rising, and they maybe think athletes are invincible, they're perfect with their food because obviously they're professional. What did you learn most, or have you learnt most since being in professional sport, and especially just, for example, with Wasps, where when you're at top level like that, every 5 to 10% makes a difference with how strong you are, how fast you are, how fit you are, how your recovery. But what would you say some of the biggest learnings that you learning from that period?
It's just standards is a big one. Like, we're always trying to push better.
Yeah.
Like, every year we'll like redefine, like, say, body composition standards for the squad.
Yeah.
And like, for last year I was this, and I was in the green. It's like I was in excellence category. It's like, well, that was last year. Now we're in this year.
Yeah.
So always just trying to get a little bit better every single sort of week, month, year.
Yeah.
So if you break it down into the different kind of categories, so you've got the nutrition, the S&C, the rehab, the psychology, technical, tactile. If we're just a little bit better in every single area, then globally you're going to improve quite considerably.
How do you evaluate that? Like, as much as like questions, but like how deep would you grow as a nutritionist for that? So say like, especially the guys you're more hands-on with, how would you magnify, when you go like, this is where you were last season, this is where you are this season. How detailed would you look at things?
So from a physical development perspective, it's really straightforward. You can look at what's their strength gains, how fast they're running. You've all got the GPS, they can measure that. How much muscle mass do you have? How much fat mass do you have? Look at that through body composition. And with body composition for rugby players at least, is very specific to the sport and the position within that sport.
Okay.
So like a tie head prop would want to be this, a loose head prop, which is kind of similar position, would want to be that, a winger, back row.
Give me an example, Chris. So, I mean, just from a selfish perspective, but I'm sure anyone who's remotely interested in sport, like say for example, you've got like a forward or a back, how would maybe their food differ, or their performance targets differ, whether it's to do with their lifts? Because obviously I played football and I know we had strength and conditioning experts during that period, but I know things have evolved so much in terms of the specifics.
Yeah, so the whole thing we're working off is just collision dominance. So
elaborate on that.
So collision dominance is basically how hard can you run into a person and can you break the tackle? And funny enough, the other team is thinking exactly the same thing. So this is why you're seeing bigger collisions every single year, more injuries, more concussions. So we're almost kind of training them to do that. So it's like, right, can you get more muscle? Can you reduce your fat mass? So if you have more fat mass, that's kind of unfunctional mass. So your speed, your efficiency, your repeatability kind of goes down.
Can you, sorry, again, because I know these are the things I'm sure people would love to know. When you say unfunctional mass, explain
that. For like an athlete, it doesn't really do too much in terms of supportive or performance. going too low with body fat, it can be very detrimental to performance, health, well-being, that kind of stuff. So we don't want to get them shredded or anything. No. That's not the point. But you're going to have that kind of sweet spot where we need them to be.
Yeah.
Anything higher is just going to kind of slow them down.
Yeah.
So every kind of step they take is a little bit more energy demanding. And if you can do that over 80 minutes, or if you're footballer 90 minutes, or if you're a marathon runner a couple of hours, it's just going to make things a little bit more taxing on the body. Yeah. So we want to sort of reduce body fat mass down to like a good standard. Yeah. And then we need to increase muscle mass. Yeah. Because say, for example, you had a 120 kilo player. Yeah. And that's his kind of fighting weight. He wants to be 120. And you take 10 kilos of fat off him, now he's 110. Yeah. It's like, okay, that's great, but you're too light. You're going to get pushed around. Yeah, yeah.
Just for the sheer weight, I suppose, isn't it? Getting shoved around.
So now it's a case of, if you think of like a rugby player, like a prop, usually kind of big, lot of body fat and stuff. Yeah. It's not that case anymore. Now they have to be just as heavy. Wow. But then lean. It's like we're trying to get lads like 130 kilos and lean.
Wow. Like, but you're not going to do that, Chris. You're not going to do that, Chris, surely. I mean, you know, it's, again, stating the obvious here, but you can't possibly do that without nutrition being on point. Yeah. I don't care how hard you're training. If you're trying to add muscle strength without compromising physical fitness and speed, I mean, so say with an example like that, someone, because I'm sure a lot of people listening to this or watching this they want to be strong, they want to be lean, they want to be fit, they want to be powerful. We all want to, you know, even clients joining Built to Last, everyone wants to be, I want to be strong, I want to be fit, I want to be powerful. How important is nutrition in terms of like, one, the quality of nutrition and maybe not eating too much, not eating too little? Like, how important is that, you know, in achieving that outcome?
It is huge, isn't it? Like, the way I kind of see it, from like the work you do in the gym, for example. Yeah. If you go to the gym in itself, in terms of like its ability to build muscle strength, it's kind of like turning a dial around maybe 60%. What you do with your nutrition, so the amount of food you eat, the time ago those foods, and the type of those foods is like dialing it around to 100. Yeah. So just by eating better, you can put the same amount of work in the gym, but get better results. Yeah. So some people like with poor nutrition, they might just like, right, I just need to grind, hustle harder in the gym. Yeah. And they will make better improvements, but they can save the extra strain and just eat better, and therefore they have more kind of reserve, shall we say, to actually do the sport better. Yeah. Yeah, so exactly. Because you can't just keep training. You can't. I'm going to train more and eat whatever I want, and
you know. And have you noticed, especially in athletes in rugby teams, a distinct difference over especially if you was for 4 years? Did you notice any patterns with people who you could clearly tell ate really well, and those who maybe didn't respect it as well? Have you noticed? Did you notice any patterns with that?
It was really nice with some of the younger academy lads I've worked with from day one. Yeah. Because I was there for 4 years, they kind of moved into the senior academy, then into this first team.
Yeah. So the foundation was right from the start.
So they had loads of time. Like in the top level, they're bouncing from meeting to meeting. Yeah. They don't have that bandwidth to have like that proper sit down, that chat to talk about the nutrition in a lot of detail. Mm-hmm. So if you can get them when they're young, when they do have this time, develop those good habits, those foundations, then they just kind of are just consistent with it because it's their new norm. Yeah. And then when they get to the higher level, they don't have to worry about like, oh, Chris, how much protein do I need per day? It's like, we covered this 4 years ago. Yeah. So now they can just focus on the technical, tactical, and actually be better at their sport.
Yeah, and they've conditioned that habit and behaviour for a good few years, so it just becomes the norms we'll come on to.
So it's great to see that, and you can see like over time when they come in, say one lad, I remember he's like 105 kilos, day one now he's like 120 kilos, knocking on a little bit heavier than that, and leaner. Wow. And it's like just being in a professional environment, make sure the food is right, the lifestyle's right, and underlined by incredible genetics. Yeah. But you just kind of blew up, and you're just like, God, look at the data. It's like you look at that trends over time. Yeah. And this is when you think of like athletic development. Yeah. People want that instant kind of result. Yeah. It's like, oh, we need to drop weight and build muscle in 4 weeks. It's like, this is a 4-year project, and he's still growing. He's still young. He's only 22. Yeah. So it's like, this is like a career-long thing.
Well, yeah. I mean, if you think about it, I mean, diverting to football, for example, like if you look at Ronaldo, what is he? I mean, obviously he's getting a little bit of flack at the minute, but people look at his body now, but surely that foundation, Chris, just like in a lot of top athletes and anyone really who's in tip-top shape in their 30s, 40s, this is where there's so much bullshit out there, isn't it, about what it actually takes to build a world-class physique and, like you say, grow honest, lean muscle without compromising body fat too much. The younger you start, it's you've got that years of conditioning you just can't buy.
For sure. Like if you got like the habits kind of built as that foundation. Then based on the goal, then you just fine tuning the details. It's like, right, do we need to push calories up a little bit? Pull it down a little bit. More carbs on that day for harder training days. Less carbs here. More in this meal, etc. But not having to do a complete overhaul every single time you're going to change one thing. It's like, right, just do this one thing, done. Like they know what they're doing. It isn't like, right, let's sit down for 60 minutes and talk about how we're going to do this.
No, I understand.
So it's like when you've got the habits, it's so easy just to fine tune.
It's no different to what we're trying to do, obviously, in Built to Last, isn't it? We're saying to the guys is, look, you just fall in love with the boring stuff to start with, learn the fundamentals, and you can be a lot more malleable from there if you just learn the fundamentals, the simple principles of, food quality, food quantity, managing your energy, moving enough to obviously walk around with the body fat you want and the body comp, but not enough that you feel like you're having to do hours and hours and hours to constantly, claw back the food that you're over consuming. So from obviously you work with wasps, share with the listeners and people watching as well some of the other teams and the athletes, those you can mention who you've worked with too.
So did a sweet and short year down in Reading football.
What did you learn most about from the difference from rugby players to football players?
Just the buy-in is completely different because...
What do you mean the buy-in? Like, be specific.
So rugby players will understand that their nutrition is important, but they won't necessarily implement that all the time. They understand it's important because when it comes back to that collision dominance, they know that they need to be building muscle, they need to be heavier, they need to be leaner, and they know the role nutrition has in that. So there's they really see the value in it. With a footballer, it's what I can gather in the short time there is a little bit less. So in terms of, if you turn up, you are lean, like you're going to be lean because you run around everywhere.
Your output's that high that your body weight is, you're going to be able to maintain your body weight is what you're saying.
So you run around pretty lean. You may be scoring quite a lot of goals, might be performing well. Okay, I don't need to look at anything more. So I think it's just the culture with football, from what I can tell from the short kind of period there, it just isn't quite the same as rugby.
Wow.
So it's just the culture side of things. And then if you're going in there, like I was only there twice a month. And then trying to do pretty much all the academy and the first team in 2 visits per month, all those people, like I wasn't having really any impact and I couldn't change the culture the way I wanted to. So if the culture is there, and the right key messages are there, then it would change for sure.
Elaborate a bit more on culture, because obviously this is what we'll come on to inside Built to Last, because again, I suppose it ties in with your own story of who you surround yourself with, right? But elaborate a bit more on the importance of culture, especially in a sporting environment, or any environment really, of in terms of it influencing shaping standards.
I think so. This can be broken down very much into like the physical environment and the social environment. So what conversations are having, what is the kind of narrative there, what are the standards behind it as well. Are they all kind of moving in the right direction? It's like, sometimes you just walk into an environment and you just think like, okay, this is peak. It's everything's like done to the highest standard. That kind of just drives in the same way, right? So from a culture perspective, and the nutrition side of it, I guess as well. They just have those different conversations. They're just different. It's
how important do you think great leaders within a culture? And I mean, this might be again stating the obvious, but from your experience, having worked with,
it's huge. So I always put like one player on a pedestal. When we think of this like peak kind of performance, like he's on the wing. Like 101 kilo. His body fat is like that. Runs over 10 meters per second at 101 kilos. Like
madness.
Absolute gas.
And
his professional standards are so high. You know exactly what he's eating, how much he's eating, when he's eating, based on different training days. Knows how to kind of balance his calories for whether it's social, whether it's family, whatever. He just kind of knew everything, and you want to know everything and do everything to the best visibility in different areas: sports psychology, rehab, S&C.
Yeah.
So it's just always that continual kind of improvement.
And how did that?
He was in the leadership group in WASPs. So then it's
so you had leadership groups in WASPs.
Yeah.
Wow.
So then it's like, right. Say for example, I had a player who wasn't quite bought in yet.
Yeah.
I'd always use him as a reference.
Yeah.
I'd be like, right, just go and speak to him.
Yeah.
And then come back to me.
Yeah. And did that have much impact?
Huge.
Really?
Huge. Because everybody wants to be like him.
Yeah.
He's 100 kilo and absolutely shredded.
Yeah.
It's like, even though he didn't have to be that shredded, like he just was.
Yeah. It was just a personal standard. Yeah.
Yeah. And he's so consistent with everything in terms of his day-to-day habits, but how he played as well. It's just consistent.
Yeah,
everything
but do you not think, like, it's the same as anything, like, you know, the outcome where he's having to perform on that given day, match or whatever it is a byproduct of that, the boring, consistent work that he was doing day to day.
Absolutely.
And maybe eating the food that other players weren't prepared to eat, going to bed at a certain time that maybe players weren't prepared to do. You know, did you have any of that in football? Did you find, I know you're only at Reading for a year, but did you find... do you have any great leaders to that same standard in football, or was it hard to pluck out?
Given the time frame and the lack of time I was there, is really hard to determine that. But if there was, then that would have been massively helpful to anchor the younger lads into those kind of behaviours, you know. Yeah,
and then so obviously you work with some great teams, and then obviously you sort of private athletes as well. What do you think? And we'll talk a little bit about Built to Last in a second to see if we notice any synergies. What do you think is the biggest challenge, if you're allowed to pick one big challenge, dealing with your professional athletes, even now? What do you think is the most common challenge that you have to deal with, whether it's to do with food, high performance, mindset, in relation to the outcomes they want?
It is, you know what, it's quite interesting between whether you're in a team sport, so you're an athlete in a team sport, or an individual athlete.
What do you mean?
Because if you're playing rugby, for example, you go out on the field, there's starting 15, there's 23 in total for the guys on the bench.
Yeah.
If you do something a little bit subpar, obviously it's not what you want to do, but don't say you can hide behind it, but you can. There's always going to be someone covering you or something like that. But if you're a cyclist, or you're a rower or runner or something like that, like whatever you put out everything's measured. It's like, right, if you're on the bike, for example, and you have to do a session and you have to do 250 watts, 300 watts, hold it for X amount. Yeah. It's all measured. It's like you either did it or you didn't. So the standards there are completely different. You just can't hide from it at all. And then because the detail is so much there in terms of those kind of sports, everything else has a lot of more detail, the nutrition, the accuracy and stuff like that. Yeah. And sometimes that could be a little bit detrimental if you go down this kind of perfectionist kind of mindset. That could be very detrimental. If just something doesn't go wrong, then everything kind of goes wrong. Yeah,
that can be like create maybe all or nothing mentality, or that never quite good enough mentality, and it's
and that is one of the things, like the on it off it kind of thing. Yeah. Especially when you come to like with off season, for example, you kind of got that off season, which you go on the piss, you eat loads of food, you do whatever. Then it's like it's fine because I'll get back into pre-season and I'll just undo everything I did, which they do. But that's not the idea. You want to progress in that pre-season, not just undo the shit stuff you did in off-season. Obviously, you need that flexibility, that relaxed kind of approach, because elite sport is so mental, kind of crazy in terms of the demands placed on you. Yeah. But it's been able to have really good habits throughout the course of the year that's sustained. So there's no need to go crazy in the off-season. Yes, go for holidays and all that kind of stuff. But it doesn't mean that you have to go in like massive binges and force feed yourself. And
don't give yourself too much hard work to do. Yeah.
So it's just consistency over the course of the year is going to be one thing. Yeah. To kind of focus on. So just kind of drilling into them, like we're trying to get better every single year, not just stay level and then undo the work in the off season. You know?
How? Because I know obviously you work with some great boxers too. I mean, this is what we obviously I say to the guys inside Built to Last. I'm like, if Chris can help people make a horrible weight to then optimize performance, dropping body fat, and it's not hard when you're trying to. Chris is obviously a master at helping elite athletes drop body fat and then optimize performance. What is the biggest challenge with that, and how much freedom do you give an elite athlete the other side of that day where they've had to peak for example? How do you keep people in check basically? How do you get optimized performance and then also give them a bit of freedom to then get back to business?
Yeah, if you have like a fat loss goal in there as well, for example. So optimal performance happens at kind of baseline, right?
Yeah.
So as soon as you go into a calorie deficit, you move south from that baseline.
Yeah.
Bigger the calorie deficit, the bigger kind of the compromise associated with that as well.
Yeah.
So we need to find a deficit, but still eat enough food to perform well.
Yeah.
So it's finding that right balance.
And how do you do that? So say for example, I mean, I don't know, we've got obviously lots of different type of people listening, but ultimately I know what you're saying you do with an athlete is how can we just drop enough body fat to optimize performance? Where would you typically start, for example, you know, say at the start phase of with an athlete or someone looking to do that?
Yeah, so it's all about finding that tipping point, that sweet spot, that fine balance. So I always use the first kind of 2 weeks I work with someone as just like an exploration phase.
Yeah.
I'll always say like, right, we're just going to find out how your body responds to this nutrition program. No expectations on it. If you drop body fat, great. If you don't worry about it. If
you reckon 2 weeks for that, Chris?
I kind of do it, yeah.
It's a fair test, basically.
Yeah, so I'll just like, right, I want to just see where maintenance is with you. Like, if you're working with someone for 6 months, 12 months, we don't have to do this in 4 weeks. It's like, right, we've got the time, let's do this properly, and let's figure out where we are.
Yeah.
So it's like, right, I'll work out their calorie requirements based on their body mass, their activity levels, their training demands, all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And I'll just get them to sit and maintenance for 2 weeks. And that actually gives me a good understanding of where they're at as well in terms of their compliance, because if they're struggling to adhere to like a nutrition program at calorie maintenance, they're going to struggle more in a deficit. So it's like, right, we'll just figure out where we are in maintenance. This is going to tell us a lot. And then based on that, we know how to adapt then.
Yeah.
So if, for example, I set my maintenance and I end up maintaining in 2 weeks, okay, this is good data for us. I will then drop calories by roughly about 15%. Yeah. And then that'll give us about 0.5 to 1% loss in body mass via body fat per week. Yeah. They're the kind of hard kind of numbers we look at over time. Yeah. And then I just marry them up with the KPIs. So in terms of, they're more subjective, right? So how's your physical and mental performance? How's your daily energy?
Yeah, elaborate on that, Chris. I say, because when you say KPIs for people who might not understand that term, because honestly we use this all the time, obviously inside the program, but whether someone's an athlete, I suppose it relates to anyone really. What would you say the key KPIs that people should be measuring in terms of like things they need to keep track on, for their performance and continual progress? What does that look like? What are they exactly?
Yeah, so for me, it's physical and mental performance. Mm-hmm. So when you go into the gym, when you compete, how you actually perform. Are you engaged? Are you alert? Do you have that spring in your step? Do your legs get heavy? So you kind of look at that subjective kind ofness. That usually ties up in terms of the overall performance, and if they've got GPS on, it tells you the running speeds and does that decline and stuff. But we'll look at that. Look at their recovery. So how quickly then can you get back up to baseline? Yeah. So if, for example, it's taken them a few days to get back up to where they should be, it's like, okay, there's probably a little bit of a deficit there in the nutrition. Are you eating enough carbohydrate? Are you rehydrating? That kind of stuff. Daily energy and fatigue levels we'll look at. And then just like wellness, well-being is going to be a key one as well. Just, just like when you're sitting here, like, how do you feel in your own skin? Yeah. Like that's an absolute key one, because nutrition can impact all of them. And I always say for every issue, there's an intervention. So if we can highlight the issue, then we have nutrition intervention for that to go in place. Yeah. So I'll kind of monitor that. So if I've got an athlete just at maintenance, at a scale of 1 to 10, we should be scoring 8, 9, 10 out of 10. Yeah. We shouldn't see any compromises. Yeah. If they're in a bit of a deficit, they might be a little bit lower, maybe like a 7 or something, but they should not really be lower than like 6, 5, because that's kind of the shit zone which we don't want anybody in. Yeah. So I'll kind of take that along with a hard data in terms of how they're progressing, and in terms of the body composition side of things and the actual data from GPS vests and stuff, and just see where they're at. And then I'll just kind of monitor that. So what are we actually seeing, say, on the scales or body fat composition measurements and stuff, and then how's that marry up with your actual subjective KPIs? No, I understand. So in relation to your sports and nutrition stuff, get my words out. What's the aspiration with that now? Like, what's the dream? What's the dream? Like, who do you love working with most? Who do you love working with most? And
where do you want to take it?
Yeah, basically just doing what I'm doing, but just bigger, bigger and better. That is absolutely key for me. Yeah. So I think what I've kind of found working with kind of high level boxers is that I probably can't have many of them.
Why? For anyone who loves boxing, demanding.
Yeah, time, energy demanding, and a little bit of probably just a lot more responsibility as well.
Yeah,
because if you work with like an elite boxer, like you're responsible for them making weight and then making sure that they are peak performance in the space of like 24 hours or something like that.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's right ways and wrong ways to do it, and also you want to try and do it in the best, safest way, because you hear some horror stories coming out from it. Yeah. But there is a larger kind of responsibility for that. And if you're trying to make weight next to the nearest kind of like pound or ounce or something like that, things have to be pretty spot on and measured. So just because it's more time demanding, energy demanding, probably not a huge amount of boxers, but they're a great challenge to work with. And it's
because I suppose whichever way you sugarcoat it, I mean, even with optimal nutrition, I mean, what would you say is the average weight that most boxers are trying to drop to make weight? Say, for example, if someone's 4 weeks out from, performance day, what would be the average weight that, from your experience, that most people are having to drop?
So I'll start with the way I plan it, basically. If they've got a 24-hour weigh-in, then there's more strategies we can use. We can pull carbohydrates out of the diet, and therefore your glycogen stores, the carb stores in the muscle and water balance, that will decrease. So we can do that. We can run like low residue diets where we pull fiber out of the diet, so you have no kind of food sitting in your gut, so you can lose a little bit of weight there, and pull like sodium out and stuff like that. So if you've got a 24-hour kind of weigh-in, basically starting fight week, you can be about 5% above your target weight. So if you're 70 kilos, you could be 73.5. And then that is absolutely fine to do. That's nice, safe, healthy. There's no compromises with that.
How would you do that? I know obviously there's no golden rule with this, it's each specific, but just some general rules that you would recommend to do that. Say if someone is 3.5 kg 5 days before there.
So easy one, which is like free weight loss, is basically on a low fiber diet. So if you go have like normal high fiber diet, 30, 40 plus grams of fiber per day, you get a lot of like kind of roughage in the gut.
I get it.
But if you then pull that down for about 3 days before you need to make weight, you'll lose. So you go on a fiber intake about less than 10 grams.
Wow.
So there's no veggies at all. And you're basically eating very simple carbohydrates and stuff. You lose maybe like 1 to 2% of your body weight just by doing that. And the water associated with that. So that's free weight loss. Then if you need to, you can pull out some carbohydrates. Then you lose the water with that as well. And remove all sodium and stuff like that as well. And you could just lose weight pretty comfortably, really. But you wouldn't touch carbohydrates or hydration, anything like that, if you've got a same day weigh-in, because that is just going to ruin performance, because you're not going to get back up to baseline in the space of a few hours. So if you go to 24 hours, you can dig yourself into a little bit of a moderate kind of hole, and you can get back up to baseline absolutely fine. But if you're over 5%, you're struggling a bit. It just means that the time before that, like the first phase of the fat loss or the weight loss, hasn't been done right, and you're playing catch up a little bit. So you'd want to like plan like the weight cut. I don't know, say you got 10 weeks or something. It's like, right, we want to lose about 0.5 to 1% body mass per week, bring you down to start a fight week where you're about 5% above, and then it's nice and easy. Where people get it wrong, we hear the horror stories, is
what are the biggest mistakes?
They don't do that phase properly.
Like, for those listening, when you say do that phase properly, like what
So, sorry, on the podcast.
no, we got the video, here's the audio, but no, what would you say the biggest mistakes are? What that might have been, you might have done it in your younger years yourself, or coaches that go wrong, or athletes who are trying to do this themselves. What would you say the biggest mistakes are?
They ultimately give themselves too much work to do. So they don't, shall we say, eat properly and in a sustainable and consistent way during the sort of fight camp to drop body fat. Then they have a horrible fight week where they're really depleting. So they dug themselves into a hole, they dig themselves into a bigger hole, and then they just binge. And then they go back more for like baseline plus 5% or something. And then it's like, right, I need to start this again. and then they go back into it, and it's this constant kind of yo-yo kind of bullshit kind of diet and approach, isn't it? It's like that is that on it off it type thing. So now it's like, again, the culture of boxing is perhaps a little bit like that, and I was just trying to educate them. It's like, why we don't have to do this. We can still have the meal on the weekend. We can still do all this kind of, have this nice food in a sustainable way. Because if you're a pro boxer and you're doing your sparring sessions, you're running the SEC, you're pushing like 3,500, 4,000 calories a day. Yeah. You don't need to be on 1,600. It's like, there's no need. It's like, we can eat 3,000 calories a day and we still have so much more flexibility with food. So now you get a better balance of performance, nice sustainable rates of fat loss, and you get a good amount of social kind of food in there as well, a few relaxed meals.
Yeah, because I mean, even that principle that Chris has just shared there, it's no different to what we preach inside Built to Last. And anyone who's remotely interested in having a great body long term, whilst being able to be strong, fit, lean, powerful year round, etc., you can't have energy out without energy in. I've said it many times before. I suppose what you're saying, whether Chris is talking about an athlete here who's trying to make weight on 1,600 calories, or we've got a client inside Built to Last who's trying to get shredded or drop fat rapidly on 1,600 calories. Elaborate on that a bit, Chris, because obviously I've said before in previous podcasts, what is the difference if you've got two athletes or two people that are training the same, but you've got one that's eating significantly less calories? At some point, especially once that spurge of motivation has dropped, the person who's eating less calories is not going to have the same oomph as the person eating more calories. But the person eating more calories is going to have more oomph out. They're going to have to train hard. I can only imagine, especially in athletes, having done a little bit of boxing myself, surely, you've got a top boxer and he's eating more food. He's going to be able to spar with more intensity. He's going to probably want to do that extra run that he needs to for his physical fitness. And so if you think of like in, say, like a boxing camp, it's like, how many high quality training sessions can you get done? Yeah, it's amazing.
So that's the key thing. It's like, not just like how many training sessions can you get done, it's like how many high quality ones can you get done?
Yeah, I love it.
Because that's the difference, isn't it? Yeah. Like they always say, like an athlete's greatest ability is their availability. So it's like, are you available to train? Yes, that's great, because that's going to increase your likeliness for success. Yeah. But then on top of that, it's like, can we make these better quality training sessions by not being in a hole all the time, by going too low with the calories? Yeah. It's like if the muscle kind of depletes by like 50% of carbohydrates, you automatically lose that spring in your step, that bounciness. You've got heavy legs, and that's where your performance drops off a cliff massively. Yeah. So you're going to have like high performance as soon as you hit roughly that 50%. It changes quite a bit in individuals based on their adaptation and stuff. But as soon as you kind of hit there, it's like it's nothing in the legs. And then it's like they might start questioning the fitness. It's like, oh, I'm not fit enough, need to do more. Yeah. It's like, no, you just haven't eaten enough carbohydrate.
Yeah. Because I suppose there's so many different ways of actually, when people say I'm tired, are you mentally tired? Are you physically tired? It's these things are going to come into play. There's different types of fatigue, aren't they? Because I think I remember just diversing. One of the, obviously my old training partners, Rich Gazecki, phenomenal human being. I remember Richard would often see other bodybuilders or other athletes around the gym, and I'm tired. I'm like, he would openly say to him, "Is it your mind, or is it you're not eating properly?" Similar to what you've just said, and
sure.
There's always a reason, but a lot of the people just look at surface level stuff,
And that's when I sort of like have a conversation with athletes when they say I'm tired, and that's okay, you dig more. Yeah. So it's like, where are you tired? Yeah. It's like, is it the legs? The legs feel heavy. That's a carbohydrate issue.
Really?
If it's like, right, is it just whole body kind of central kind of fatigue and not the peripheral? Yeah. It's like, okay, what's overall kind of stress, like your allostatic load? What's that like? Is psychological stress high? Is sleep not quite on point? Yeah. Is your training load too high? And you've got a lot of like neurological kind of fatigue. Yeah. Neuromuscular fatigue, sorry. So
how much can lifestyle factors influence that as well, though, Chris? Because obviously if you've got external stress, say they might have businesses or relationship issues and stuff, because obviously, I mean, we could open a can of worms of maybe another podcast, but surely that can impact stuff too, right?
100%. And this is what I try and educate them on massively and make them aware of it. Yeah. Is like, right, so if I work with like a semi-pro athlete, they're still training 15, 20 hours a week. Yeah. They've got a full-time job, work 40 hours, they still got a family, and they still need to do everything. So it's like, right, you need to consider the whole load. It's not just like the the physical kind of load they monitor in training, that's obviously important. But then it's like, if you've had a hard day in work, a really stressful day, that's going to drain you. And then it's like, right, the kids are playing up when you get home, that's draining you. And then you're trying to run a calorie deficit on top of this, that's going to drain you.
Yeah.
So it's like you periodize your training days into like your hard days, easy days, medium days.
Yeah.
I always try and like ask them to try and periodize their life accordingly with that.
Yeah.
So they're always at like 100%, so
Yeah.
they're not going bang, bang, bang everywhere. So their cup doesn't overflow. So yeah, this whole kind of lifestyle side of things is huge. And that's why I'm probably kind of moving from just like a nutrition coach, more nutrition and lifestyle kind of coach, because that is so huge. Yeah. Because if someone's got, I don't know, exams on and they've got, or like got deadlines to meet, and then they got hard training demands, they've got competitions.
Oh, they've got a kid to think about.
It's like, right, is being in a calorie deficit right now complementing or complicating what we're doing? Yeah. And they're like, oh, you know, their food focus is through the roof because they're so stressed, they're emotionally inconsistent, all this kind of stuff. So it's like, right, for this time being, in terms of our long-term plan, let's just put foot on the gas for the calorie deficit. Let's just maintain. Let's put food back in. Let's eat to support your energy levels and feel good. And at least we remove one of the stresses out of your life. And then when things do settle down, we can get our foot back on the gas with it a little bit more. So it isn't like, you know, on it, off it type thing. It's like, right, dial things down, dial things back.
Yeah, it's like you're never off it. It's exactly what we preach inside Built to Last, is that you're never off it, but you pick and choose your moments when you put foot to the floor to step things up. And I think that's where, if you listen to this and you feel like you've never quite optimized consistency month to month, year round, as I continually bang on about, one of the reasons for that may be that you're just being deluded with your expectations of how you could or should look and perform year round. And I think that's where on the front end, whether it's someone who's been in shape all year round or an elite athlete, these elite athletes or these people that are in phenomenal shape, you're not always at 100% eating absolutely perfect, but you're never off it. That's what's key, isn't it? You know?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, for sure. So it's like the lifestyle stresses are just huge. They play a huge role in it. Yeah. Especially like the overall kind of sleep quality and things like that. Especially if you're looking for like peak performance. Yeah. It's like, right, if you had a really shitty night's sleep, it's like, are you going to actually train maximal on that day? Are you going to make calorie deficit? Probably not, especially if it's over kind of a few days or a week. Sometimes you could just like, right, just knock it down and just get it done.
Suck it up, but it's not always, you know, I'm sure we've both been bit in the ass multiple times on this, Chris, but I've done exactly what you've just said. In the last few days, I've had that much on. Me going as mental on my heavy squats, you just not, you're not there. You have to adapt, you know.
For sure.
Yeah, and then I know we're really protective of your time, but what have you noticed? What have you noticed in terms of similarities of traits of, say, the athletes you work with, and obviously you've worked, you know, massively a part of our Built to Last mission in terms of helping high performers, business leaders, entrepreneurs. What traits would you say from both athletes and high performing businessmen, business leaders, entrepreneurs that separate those that get to the top of the tree in what they do, where they tick all the boxes? And what have you noticed in those that maybe athletes who don't go quite as far as what they could do, and the same with clients who struggle a bit more? What traits would you say separate the high performers from the people that are work in progress, to put it politely?
Yeah, for sure. I think you said this like a couple of times, like, you know, good enough isn't good enough. So if you're like an elite athlete, like peak performer in business, you've had a huge amount of success in your respective fields. And then it's like, right, trying to make them aware of that and how they can pull that up from a nutrition and training and lifestyle perspective. Yeah. So it just comes down to being very detail orientated and very process driven. Yeah. Because, you know, they're just process driven all the time. Like, this is my to-do list today. These are the things I need to tick off. If I do this, I'm going to move closer to my end goal. So they trust in the process and they're patient with it. And because they just focus on the daily kind of non-negotiables, they become consistent because they're not overly affected about the outcomes which they can't control.
So would you say definitely more prepared, more organised?
100%, yeah, for sure. Yeah. So they've planned everything. So especially like the athletes work with, they'll know how much they're eating every day, when they're eating, what they're eating, mapped over the course of the week. Yeah. business leaders will do exactly the same thing, but instead of having like a performance kind of narrative, it might have like a travel narrative instead. So it's like, right, I'm traveling to this meeting, I'm doing that, I'm doing that. So they know like where they're staying, when they're traveling, how much they need to eat, when they're getting steps in, all this kind of stuff. So it's all organized, it's all blocked in really well. And all they have to do then, tick, 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 is the process.
So they save bandwidth by planning and forward thinking. And again, I've probably bored so many people, but the reason I wanted to get Chris on today is you know, this isn't magic, some of the stuff we're saying, but Chris has just shared what top elite athletes are doing. But the same principle applies whether you're an athlete or not. In terms of your behaviour, you know, it's what takes care of the outcome is you know, just implementing the boring process system. You know,
peak performance doesn't happen by chance, does it?
No, exactly.
It's like,
that.
So you can't be reactive. Just like, I know I'll scan something on my Fitness Pal and a barcode. It can kind of work, but if you're looking for that high level, everything has to be planned.
Yeah,
it really does. Like, if you think of like big businesses and stuff, they're not just reactively planning. Like, everything's locked in. So why would you do anything different if you're trying to get success in this kind of field?
Yeah. How just coming towards the end now, because I mean, me and you could talk all day about this. How important would you say people's eating habits, in relation to people's eating habits, how important would you say people's mindset and emotional consistency, I think you've mentioned that a few times, is in relation to eating better?
It's probably one of the biggest challenges we have, isn't it?
Yeah. It's
huge, because especially when it comes to like high fat, high sugar, hyperpalatable foods.
How much of that would you say is playing devil's advocate here? Because again, me and you obviously spoke about this. How much do you think people's eating habits, in terms of like habits they want to break and to eat better, is actual habit from years of doing it, and how much is down to just mindset, emotional reactiveness, or is it a mixture of two?
Yeah, definitely a mixture of the two.
Yeah.
So I think it largely comes down to, if I use myself for example, it comes down to environment, both the physical environment and the social environment.
Yeah.
So if I'm at home, I know my physical environment is very supportive for high performance stuff like that. Good quality. If you go into my cupboards and my fridge, you're not going to find any shit food in there.
Yours is probably the same as mine, Chris. Like, I don't, especially since I've outsourced it. You know, in Dubai, I order Deliveroo. Like, my fridge is really empty. It's pathetic. If someone comes around my house, it's probably the same as yours. Like, you got something in the fridge. Not really. It's not a pleasing place to come to because there's not a lot on. But I don't know. Chris is obviously at home. You obviously have how many meals a day? Like five or six or something. So I can imagine your fridge.
But it's all veg. Like my family came over. My niece, she's like 7-year-old, and she's like, "You got any food?" It's like, "Do you want broccoli?" I don't really have anything.
You want to get some chicken and veg out for your 7-year-old niece.
It's like, there you go. That's nice and anabolic for you. Have that. But no, so physical environment is huge.
Yeah.
And then if I am like emotionally triggered by whatever, which we know then increases the likeness and drive to eat these kind of high fat, high sugar foods. And it's usually a kind of reactive decision, right? It's impulsive. It's like, if I have this impulse kind of drive, it's like, I got nothing in the house. It's like, well, okay. It looks like I'm staying home son, you know? But if you had those foods in the cupboard, 9 times out of 10, you're going to get it. It might be so many times you can say, no, 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 but that no is going to turn to a yes at some point.
Yeah.
So your environment is so important for just molding those behaviors and those habits.
Yeah.
And we know that kind of visual cue is going to drive that, increase the habit as well.
Yeah.
So if you know, like it's on the table or it's in the cupboard, even if you've hidden it in the cupboard, you know it's fucking there. Like, you're going to get it, right? So eating environment is absolutely huge for that. And then it's like the social environment. So your peers, your colleagues, your family, are they influencing your decisions? So they're a huge one as well. So even though like you might be like an elite athlete, peak performer, like you as like an individual, but then you're in this environment where it's like loads of other kind of foods that's probably not supportive. That's the challenge then. So when I speak with athletes or peak performance, it's like, right, let's focus on what we need to do, and then let's just make sure the environment is as supportive as possible. And if you need to then have those kind of key conversations with people in your social environment, to make sure they're supportive with you. So like have that discussion. Might be a hard conversation, but just have it. It's like, right, I'm doing this because of X, Y, Z. The consequences are X, Y, Z if I don't do it.
So would you say, so what you're saying is anyone who's maybe thinking, okay, whether they're a high performer, they're an athlete, and I want to eat better to take my body, my performance, my physical aspirations, whatever they are, to another level, and you've got partner, colleagues, kids, whatever, who are maybe not quite aligned on your drive to reach a certain standard, is to just be quite direct with them and frame the conversation of like, this is why I'm doing this, and this is the meaning behind it.
So, you know, like peak performance excellence in this isn't normal.
No, of course it isn't. No.
So it's like completely alien to other people. So it's like, right, you're trying to get them to live on this kind of level where they're not bought into this kind of story, and they don't want to do that. They want to stay where they are, but you're different. So you just need to make them aware of that. Because sometimes they might offer you like sort of a biscuit, chocolate, something like that, because they feel like they're doing the right thing. They want to be generous, and they're sort of like, oh, have this, is nice. But actually, you're actually sabotaging me. Don't do that. So you just need to have that conversation with them, you know, just to make sure everything is supportive.
What would you say, just as again we'll sort of wrap up now, say if anybody's listening to this and they're not where they want to be and they know food is the issue, what would you say is like 1 to 3 tips for people to go, right, I'm not where I want to be, I know food is the challenge, because the amount of times that I bring in a client to Built to Last and okay, everything's good, just my food, right? No shit, right? What would you say, 3 steps to sort of get people started to put on the right path? What would that look like?
First thing I get basically everyone to do is always a food diary. So them, because they don't usually have that awareness around their food, they might just grab something, eat it, another cappuccino, drink that, glass of wine, drink that. They don't realize what they're doing. So it's like, right, first of all, just write down everything you eat and drink. Don't bullshit, don't lie to yourself, don't lie to me. Just be completely open, honest and transparent. Stick it on paper and let's see what you do. And then just doing that process just makes them aware of like, oh, okay, I do all this. So that first of all just highlights like basically what they're perhaps not doing so well. You might show like, right, this is all the stuff you're doing well and not so well. Then it's like, okay, with the stuff you're not doing so well, how can we just reduce this over time? So what's the low hanging fruit? What can you get rid of first? And then the second step is then how can you then further refine everything else? Then over time, through doing this consistently, you're going to get like a high performance kind of meal plan or program. So that would be the kind of the longer way to kind of do it. But first of all, just you need to be aware of what you're doing.
Because you can't change, you can't track what you can't measure, or if you don't know, that's what I find baffling sometimes with business owners, isn't it? Like in order for them to reach a certain target, at some point, you had to go from where you were to that target. But if you didn't know where you were starting from, how do you know what you need to do to reach that target? It's the same principle, right, with food.
100%. And one of the reasons why I love doing the food diaries as well, as simple as the exercise is, it just gives me a really good understanding of how well they record and track their food. Because you'll see a sort of a food diary, MyFitnessPal, you'll tell straight away whether it's accurate or whether it's complete bullshit. And that's one of the humans are amazing at underreporting, underrecording what they eat, and overreporting, overrecording what they burn. So it's like, oh, I'm burning 3,000 calories and eating 600 calories. You're not. It's like I always say, like if the maths doesn't add up, it doesn't add up. Like if you're maintaining weight, you're calorie maintenance, you're not in a deficit. So that tells me a huge amount. It's like, okay, you're missing something off here. Like, are you just unaware of what you put in your mouth? Or are you actually lying and not putting it down? So that tells me a huge thing. So food diary is absolutely key. So I say first things to do is just do a food diary. That then highlights deficits. Then you can start putting a plan of action in place from there. If you're working with a coach, nutritionist, they can look into more detail. It's like, okay, we can obviously look at the overall kind of balance of foods and calorie management and things like that. Then we can look into the finer details of, are you having enough protein? Are you having enough fiber? All that kind of stuff to build more of a detailed plan. But without that, the first step is just put pen and paper and see where you're at.
And that's why if you listen to this as well, I did a podcast once, Chris, it was about, and as much as we know the benefits of fixed meal plan approach. And with elite athletes, I think if you can control everything you put in your mouth, you've got a more predictable route to progress. But what Chris is saying there, and it's exactly what we do inside Built to Last, isn't it? Like, you know, we give every single client who starts an example meal plan, but it's exactly that. The most important thing, as Chris shared, is like, you need to just evaluate exactly what's going in your mouth, because I mean, it's very, very rare in the modern day world and that you can control and cook every single meal of every day, of every week, you know. So what Chris is saying there for me is a much better approach to kick off with is, if you're logging and tracking everything, that way, you know, you don't have to live in a box necessarily, and it's just it's more conducive to the way you're going to continue your day-to-day life, in my opinion, because unless you can carry your meal plan around with you, especially if you travel or if you're on planes or, you know, you're in hotels, which me and Chris are in a hotel just now, that's where this fuck it, on it, off it mentality can come from, can't it? Or if I can't do it perfect, I can't do it at all. And that's why one thing we do in Built to Last, and especially since Chris has come on, is educate people on the different ways to manage your food. Because, you know, you probably listened to this, having tried a few different meal plans, but unless you know how to adapt off a meal plan, you're fucked, basically.
Like, nutrition has layers, doesn't it? I think of that like the pyramid model.
Yeah, I remember.
Calorie management is absolutely key at the bottom.
Yep.
So if you've got like an absolute mental week, the food choices aren't going to be great, you're traveling here, can you just control your calories?
Yep.
Forget about the rest, just do the calories.
Mm-hmm.
If you've got a little bit more bandwidth, can you add a protein goal to that?
Yep.
If you then got a little bit more, can we focus on food quality, so 80% high quality foods?
Yeah.
Then that is pretty much all we need to kind of focus on. And it's almost like a continuum, like based on, you know, your schedule and things like that. Do we dial things up, pull it down, and where do we need to be? If you're at home, you can control everything. It's like, right, let's do calorie management, protein goals, food quality.
Yeah.
But if you're then traveling across the world or whatever, just focus on calories. And if you can, get a bit of protein, because you're still going to make progress with calorie management, right?
Yeah.
It's not going to be peak performance progress, but you're still going to make progress.
Yeah, and then
so you always, you know, like maintain or progress, don't we? Never regress.
Yeah, exactly. And even if like you're scratching, you go, oh, what do I eat? But you know, give or take. If I'm eating protein every time I eat, whether it's a snack or I'm eating a main meal, and I'm just being conscious of the quantity of food on my plate, and obviously with a deeper understanding, going, right, is the majority of that real food? Even if you didn't cook that food, you're probably going to by default, right, handle the quality of that meal as a whole, you know?
For sure. And that just comes back down to your habits. If you do it for long enough, it just becomes a new norm. Yeah. Like if I'm going out for lunch or something now, it's like I'm not going to go for a McDonald's or KFC or anything like that. Yeah. It wouldn't even come into my thought. Yeah. I'd be like, right, where can I get a good protein hit? Where can I get something for 500 calories? Yeah. You know, it's just a different way of thinking, isn't it? When your habits are there.
Yeah. And the more you repeat that, and as it's what we're trying to do inside Built to Last, and I know Chris is doing with his athletes, when you condition that over and over and over again, and it might sound a little bit boring, and if you listen to this, you go, God, that was intense. God, do you have to be that on it? If you have if you're happy with if you're happy with your body shape, with your current food management strategy, whether you're an athlete or you're a high performer, you're happy with how you look, how you feel, how you perform, you know, then what you're doing is clearly working. But if you're not, these things that we spoke about today and that Chris has shared that you use with elite athletes, they translate to everyday people, in my opinion. It's just details that matter. But you should notice from the podcasts I've done myself about food, and obviously Chris coming on now, there should be some overriding principles that if you focus on high quality food, managing your calories, eating enough protein, then by default you're going to put yourself in a good spot, you know. But Chris, we're going to wrap this up now. Thank you so much for your time. Where can people find you in terms of your social media and your website?
Best place is Instagram. So Chris Lowe Nutrition, the athlete nutrition coach even, and chrislowenutrition.com. Is website for everything, coaching, consulting, and everything else in between.
Yeah, and as I say, I just want to thank him again for his time. As I say, Chris has been genuinely at the heartbeat for all of those amazing transformations you saw the last few years. I mean, they were very good before, but I'm sure you'll agree if you check out any of our work that I mean, we're getting 40, 50, 60-year-old men in better shape than most coaches and athletes, but it was Chris that was at the heartbeat of certainly raising the bar and overseeing the standard of performance in our coaching team now. And we're just absolutely obsessed, aren't we, mate, with how can we help people perform better but ultimately be happier in whatever the goals they're trying to achieve. So please check him out. He gives so much free value on social media. And we'll definitely be bringing him on again. I know we could talk for days about food and high performance. So thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you next time.